the plan in your head will always fail.
Just get started. Entrepreneurship is a lot of fun, a lot of hard work.
What do you do if the plan in your head fails?
Restart.
Each one of us as founders has failed multiple times and made bad decisions.
How do I know if my idea is good enough?
You don't. How do founders know that they're actually on the right track?
It will give me flexibility. So there was no flexibility that comes with entrepreneurship for sure.
Yeah. Hi and welcome to episode 5 of Unscripted. We are Mohit and Malika, founders of the Moms Company, and had the privilege of creating India's largest D2C exit. At Unscripted, we try and make entrepreneurship accessible by answering your questions, which is what we are doing today through a QnA, and telling you stories and what we've learned through our journey at the Moms Company.
So in this episode 5, today we are again going to pick up questions that all of you have sent. A large part of when we started doing Unscripted was and created this podcast was to share our personal stories and our own personal learnings. And now that, of course, a lot of you have sent in the questions, it's our time to sort of answer back those questions.
This is my favorite discussion topic about actually starting a company and growing a company. Should I bootstrap my business or should I fundraise?
So I don't think there is a right answer or an answer that fits everyone, right? Now, it's very dependent on what is it that the founder wants himself or herself, right? So I'll just explain that a little more. So in my opinion, every founder starts a company with very different objectives, right? And none of those objectives is either right or wrong. It's yours. And considering the amount of hard work that you're putting in as an entrepreneur, the number of hours that you're putting in building your own business, it's up to you to decide what you want out of your business. Now, if there is something like a very high growth, very high scaling company that you need and you want, and that drives and is the primary motivator for you to do it, then probably getting funded is important because capital just gives you that leverage to invest a lot more very quickly to get that high growth. But if you're someone who can deal with patient capital, someone who can deal with the fact that, I will grow slowly and profitably, it's okay to grow slowly, but it's important for me to do it very differently. It's not just it's not the quick scale that attracts me, but it's a healthy growth scale that kind of attracts me. Then maybe you can go ahead as a bootstrap business as well. In both cases, capital is very important. But the other thing also which is very important, because it is so important to have the capital, is how much of a leverage do you have on your own to continue doing what you're doing for a sustainably long period of time, right? There are a lot of people who have a lot of personal backing from family money and everything. So those guys can probably still think of going a lot more bootstrapped. So it's not just that, it's also got to do with your own personal backing, right? So how long, if you're doing a bootstrap business and the thought that, let me keep doing my job and I will do this by the side, and my current job will keep funding my current business, does not necessarily always work, right? You might have to take a risk of actually quitting your full-time job to really build this very quickly and put in a lot more effort in that. In that case, how much of capital do you have access to personally? Because you will be putting in your own personal capital to grow. This is important. Now, if you don't have that, probably getting funding would be important. But not every idea is a fundable idea, right? Like when you think of getting funding, just don't think of getting how you'll get that first check. Please try and figure out how will you get those next 3 subsequent checks as well. So if your business is not some business which would need so many rounds of funding, maybe going bootstrapped is a better idea because you will not get into this whole ecosystem of fundraising in that case and probably do that much, much later. But if it is, I've had people who have reached out to me saying कि मेरे को tuition classes शुरू करनी है, मेरे को funding लेनी है. Not necessary. Like, I think ask the question saying why? Why do you need funding? And once you have that why described, I think should be a large reason to figure out whether you go with bootstrapped or you take a funded business, because the way you will run both the businesses will be very different, right? Yeah. And as attractive as it may sound of the fact that I am funded, yes, it does bring out a validation from a very strong set of experienced people where they're trusting your idea. So it's It's a belief that yes, what I'm trying to do has a potential to grow really big, because otherwise nobody's putting in that money for you. But at the same point of time, I think there is also its own charm on building something by saying that, I'll be more resourceful.
मैंने अपने पैसे से बनाया.
मैंने अपने पैसे से बनाया, या फिर मैंने मैंने लोगों से बोला मेरे लिए फ्री में कर दो, एक को बार्टर में दे दो, या फिर मैंने ग्रांट्स के लिए अप्लाई किया. इट्स नॉट जस्ट फंडिंग, राइट? यू कुड अप्लाई फॉर ग्रांट्स, यू कुड डू एनीथिंग, एंड देन इट हैज इट्स ओन चार्म. इट हैज इट्स ओन चार्म. सो इट डिपेंड्स ऑन हु यू आर एज एन इंडिविजुअल and what your business is. That should define bootstrapped versus a funded business.
So of all the businesses I see, I think I have a track record of about 7 to 8 out of 10 businesses. I tell them, please don't raise money, bootstrap it, right? And grow it at its own pace. And the reason is, if you are in this decision making, you have to figure out what is the incentive of the investor to put in money. And लोग ज़्यादा सोचते नहीं. You understand your perspective as a founder, but as an investor, just think about where the investment is coming. Investing in a startup is the riskiest asset class that an investor can have. By default, they are putting in money only if they say, ये पैसा मेरा 10 गुना, 20, 30 गुना हो जाएगा, and for that I'm willing to take a very risky bet now. Which means by default, what Malika is saying is, you are creating a highly risky business, because you will either have a mega outcome or you may have to shut down or have a very media outcome, right? You cannot grow step by step by step. You have to grow very, very quickly. You need to raise more funding. You are on a treadmill. You have to own the market in some shape and form of whatever you're doing, right? So by default, if you are asking for money, the first question I would ask is, can I give an investor a 10, 20, 30x return? If I can, then I should go and have a conversation. And this is a lot of detail, but if I can't give that, I should try and bootstrap. Now in bootstrapping, I've actually had, as an example, I'll give you 3 interesting examples in the last 3 weeks. One is, like Malika said, I spoke to a startup in the pharmacy space who said we have a patent. And they actually, when I said don't go and raise money for it because it's very hard to distribute, they went and figured out a grant. And they took a grant, and now they're well on their way without any dilution, giving up equity, but well on their way to creating a massive company. I had another conversation with a person who is in the sports field, who wants to create a lot of sports centers and aggregate them and so on. Again, I said not very fundable because sports, unfortunately, doesn't make money in India. Interestingly, he went back to people who traditionally invest in real estate. And he is now partnering with them and creating these 100 other entrepreneurs along with him on this journey, who will give him money for him to grow, right? So there's a lot of capital and money available in India. Don't get sucked into the idea of startup investing funding because that's what you see in the newspapers. There's a lot of money out there. What you have to find is the money that marries the vision and the business that you have and is right for you as a business. I think it's 9 out of 10 times it's actually not a venture capital at all.
Yeah, I think we should just take this as a full episode.
I think this is going to be one.
We'll take like a full episode of our own conversations on probably how to fundraise, what to look at in an investor. There's a lot of topics to cover, so we'll take this up as a full-fledged episode later.
Okay.
All right, next question is, how do I know if my idea is good enough?
You don't, is the idea. You have to test it with people. One of the biggest fallacies that you will have is going by your gut only about the idea. So as a good test, these are the 3 things that I say. One is the idea or the problem that you are trying to solve is truly felt by people, and it's not just something that they say. Second, really important, is if you provide a solution, people will actually pay for it. And that you will know only after testing it. There are fantastic, many problems out there to be solved. People have many problems in their day-to-day lives. Not many would actually pay for it. But if you can figure out how to monetize and pay for it, that's fantastic. If you can figure out, good idea, people have a problem and monetization, then figure out the cost it would take, right? If the cost of you delivering that product or service is much higher than what people are willing to pay, you don't have a business. And if you are passing all these 3 steps, then the last one is, according to me, how big can this then be? And can someone else copy me? If you're creating a problem and then a solution which is fantastic, people are willing to pay for it, but actually 100 people can figure this out and do it immediately the next day, you will all make very nice, profitable, but very small businesses. And so that's my 4-step process on whether a problem is a good idea and can be converted to a business.
I think you would never know whether your idea is good enough or not, right? And I don't think it is, you need to be married with that also. What should be enough for you is my idea good enough for me to get started, right? So does it have enough of an audience for itself? Does it have to have a good product to sell, right? Because you will realize it very quickly that through your journey, your own personal aspirations will change. Through your journey, your product will go through multiple levels of iteration. Your offerings will change and everything will keep changing, right? And it's your own personal drive to make something successful that will keep going on, right? I started the company expecting X out of it. I landed up expecting and getting something a lot more from it. But it was because through the course, I iterated myself, right? I kept growing my dream. So it'll keep changing. So it's more important to know, is your idea good enough to get you started? And is it good enough to get you the first set of audience? And that should be more important for you. Just get started. Entrepreneurship is a lot of fun, a lot of hard work. And it's just brilliant. It's a great personal experience. It's great personal growth. So good enough to get started, get started.
And the next question is linked to this actually. What do you do if the plan in your head fails?
Restart. Restart. It doesn't matter if it fails. You have nothing to lose after that, right? There is nothing to lose.
Yeah.
And as they always say that if you're at the bottommost, the only way to go is upwards. So if an idea has failed, reiterate it. Go talk to people. Figure out why it failed, right? I'm assuming when you started, you had done your research on saying, yes, I have a TAM there's an audience for it. There is a certain set of people who cared for what my offerings was. So there should be a fundamental flaw in possibly in its execution. Unless there was a flaw in the original business plan, in which case you redo your business plan. But if there was a flaw in the execution, just restart, redo it. Sometimes people don't like the packaging, change it. Sometimes people don't like your product, change it. Someone doesn't like something in your app, change it. It's easier to do. It's harder to get started. So don't
just get started.
Yeah, it's don't let all of this down.
Yeah, and
should
I
not
think
put you down. Just go create.
And just remember that all paths to success have tons and tons of failures in them. Each one of us as founders has failed multiple times and made bad decisions. The plan in your head will always fail. What really matters is how quickly do you realize it's failing and actually make a difference and change. Don't get stuck following the same idea forever क्योंकि मेरा idea था. Right? You just get stuck. So be very, very flexible. Look for ways to prove your own idea wrong, and that will make you much better and faster.
What are the 3 myths about startup world that you believed in and were busted when you started one yourself?
Oh, that's a great question. 3 myths of the startup world that were busted when we started. 1, I thought because of my background and experience and consulting, etc., things would be easy. Things were not easy. They were actually much harder because I had to retrain myself on everything. Second, I thought fundraising would be easy because my idea is fantastic. Fundraising was very hard because beyond my idea, it actually, every fundraiser or every capital allocator is looking at very, very different things. And it's almost a marriage and you have to get nuanced into it. Third was, as we grew bigger and our team grew more senior, we thought we would relax and chill and go to the beach and our teams would drive everything. It actually meant completely the opposite, because what it meant was with people who came in with very high experience and drive and aspirations, they needed a lot more of our time and attention to put their energies and efforts together in a way that was huge impact for the company. So my 3 myths. Malika?
The 3 myths about startup that got busted for me was that your first product is going to be your best product. Not true. You will learn so much more. You will have access to so much more. You will have access to so much better. Because when you start, you don't have the best people available who want to sign up with you, right? Because they want some amount of scale to reach before you can do it. So your first product may not be necessarily your best product. Second, that a good product is all that you need, which is not true. It is as important it is to have a good product. It is equally important to create the market for the good product as well. If you're unable to create a good market for the product, who will you sell to? Eventually, you're building a business to sell product, right? So having a very sharp marketing communication is also equally important. It's not always about the best product. And third, that it will give me flexibility. So there was no flexibility that comes in entrepreneurship for sure.
Yeah.
In fact, it's all time consuming. It's not easy. And as people might believe that saying, people kind of reached out to me and said that, oh, you're a mom and you got 2 kids and now you're doing an entrepreneur journey. So of course, you balance and manage your own time. I was like, I can manage my own time, but I am so all consumed that even if I can, I don't. Right?
You choose not to.
You choose not to. So those were the 3 biggest myths for me that got busted when we started.
So when you started up, how did you know, and more broadly, how do founders know that they're actually on the right track?
Consumer feedback. I think that's the only core metrics that you should look at constantly. Be obsessed about what the consumer is liking, because at the end of the day, you need to make money. Now, that money will only get made if someone buys your product. How many people are buying that product? Incrementally, month on month, how many new consumers are you inducting? Every month, how is your repeat looking at? Are people coming back to make the purchase? Because every now and then, acquiring cannot be a solve for it, right? You need to have few people coming back, and that's how you will end up being profitable eventually. So just crazily looking at what the consumer is talking about your product. And I think the best feedbacks are given when you're not sitting in the room by yourself, right? What are people talking about your brand, about your product when you're not in the room is something that you need to get to.
Yeah.
Right? It is not the marketing agency which will run a test for you and tell you what are these stats and these 10 things that people think about your brand. No. What is the actual consumer speaking about? How close are you to your consumer to hear them out, right? Is what is very important. I think they are the ones who judge your future. They are the ones who judge your present. Then they are the ones who are going to take you wherever you have to. So being obsessed about consumer feedback is, I think, the most important thing, and that should be the biggest scale of how successful you're getting and where you're going. They'll indicate it both.
You're never too big to talk to a consumer.
Yeah.
The minute you lose touch of what the consumer is actually telling about you, you will actually, that's, I think, to me, the start of your downfall. So how do you know you're on the right track? Talk to your consumers. If there is true love by a few consumers, you're on the right track. And never lose that touch. Thank you. That was a great episode, Malika. Thank you for all the questions. And like we did in the last episode, we didn't agree on anything, which is great for entrepreneurs. So just a quick reminder, our job at Unscripted is to make entrepreneurship accessible and to answer all of your questions. So please do write on your comments below. We'll be doing many more Q&A sessions like this. Let us know guests that you would like us to have. And whose story you would like to hear as well.
And yes, as promised, we will very quickly and soon shoot an episode on whether you should go bootstrapped or get a funded business. Please do like, share and subscribe to the podcast, and do share with anyone who's looking to do their own entrepreneurial journey. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below. We'll be very happy to take them on. And until next time, please do like, share and subscribe to Unscripted, and please do share the podcast with any of your friends who might learn something while they're on their journey on entrepreneurship.
Until next time.
See you. Bye.